Well, hello, welcome back. Good evening, good day, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. My name is David O'Regan. I'm a cardiac surgeon in West Yorkshire in the United Kingdom, and I'm also the director of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers for the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. Last week, we were going bananas, and I've been going bananas this evening, as you can see, and we're going to start there because what I've noticed over 20 years of running the Power Excellence course is that we've been learning to stitch with our non-dominant hand behind our back. And the very interesting thing is, as soon as I introduce the non-dominant hand and a pair of forceps into stitching, it all seems to go awry for some reason. So I've been working on a new model, and what I've done is actually placed some staples in this banana around where I've been stitching. And the idea is that I'm going to stitch, and as I'm stitching, I'm holding the staple relevant to that quadrant. The idea is that I do not pull the staple out, because there are two things that I notice with people stitching with a pair of forceps. I call it drift, drag, and crush. So the drift is, as people are focusing on the dominant hand, the non-dominant hand drags and pulls and crushes the tissue. The other thing I notice is that people grab the suture and crush the suture, and the suture monofilaments are really stretched out bits of plastic. And if you take a bit of monofilament and crush it like that and run your fingers along it, you can feel that you've flattened it and indeed damage the suture, and that could break. The other thing I noticed with people stitching is that they use the forceps to help deliver the needle, but this interrupts the perfect circle or rotation of the needle. So I'm taking that big needle again, my sternotomy needle, into my banana to demonstrate to you. People take the needle through, grab it, pull it through with the forceps, and then pick it up again. And I put it to you that this action destroys the perfect rotation of the needle through the tissue. But now we're going to have to rewind to actually look at forceps, which, as I've said, is the ubiquitous tool in surgery. And you need to be able to use your forceps with both your dominant and non-dominant hand. Now essentially there are two different types of forceps. The first are called tooth forceps, and if you look at those, you can see little teeth at the end, like little rat's teeth that interdigitate, and these are Adson's tooth forceps. He was a neurosurgeon. I'm not sure why he wanted teeth, or if he was just picking people's brains. The other are non-tooth forceps, and these are DeBakey forceps, and they got rows of fine teeth on one side, two rows, that interdigitate with a single row of fine teeth on the other side. And these are crushing forceps. Both can do damage. And, as I've done earlier, I've used them on the skin. You'll see here the tooth forceps has left serious scratches and puncture marks in this banana all the way along as it's been grabbed and crushed. The DeBakey forceps on the opposite side here has crushed as well and left scratch marks. And this is quite evident on this banana, but I can assure you I can see it on the skin when people are closing a sternotomy. And that is actually putting the wound at risk of infection. So both instruments have different functions. First of all, the tooth forceps for the skin should really be used just to reflect. I'm not closing it, I'm using it to reflect. All the way along, reflect. Crushing forceps, or non-tooth forceps, should not be used on the skin at all, and they cause damage. There are papers that have demonstrated mucosal damage, histological mucosal damage on the bowel using crushing forceps. And I believe this all comes down to a very simple problem, because we are not holding the forceps properly. Consider this. Most people hold the forceps as if they're holding a pen. And if you like to see there, my fingernails blanching, yeah? And as I'm doing that, if you look at my forearm, you see my flexus pollicis longus and my flexus digitorum working in the forearm. Those are the biggest muscles in the deepest layer of the forearm. And this is great for holding a pen because you've got a good grip, your wrist movement and your arm movement can draw characters as you write across the page. But look at that pressure, that blanching. And moreover, if you look at the contact my finger has with the forceps, it is barely the tips of my thumb and my finger. And those are the tips you recognize that you hold a pen. So I would recommend that you hold the pen and you utilize the intrinsic muscles of your hand. Because as I've explained, your arm, your shoulder, your forearm, pronation, supination can get your hand into every position that is required to effect a function. So how do you hold your forceps? Well, balance them between the thumb and finger on the first dorsal interossei and resting on my middle finger. And note now, I am going to close my thumb and my finger around the forceps. The DIP joints are extended. And now I'm using those unique muscles intrinsic to the hand, the lumbricals, 4 in each hand, and they're most peculiar because they're the only muscles in the body that do not have any bony origin or insertion. They arise from the palmar fascia and the flexor digitorum and extend laterally across the fingers to the extensor fascia across the DIP. And there you go. And what you've got, as you have noticed before, is that movement, what I call Kermit the Frog. Okay? And that's your lumbrical movement. That movement is not using your forearm muscles. And more importantly, we now look the pen grip and now the lumbrical grip, and you'll see that the pulp of your finger is now completely embracing your forceps. And why this is important, you see there, around my forceps, why this is important is because all your Merkel cells and your myelin corpuscles sitting in the dermal ridges are there helping you with the lightness of touch, like that. And notice, as I'm holding it now, my fingernails are not blanching. Therefore, there is not a lot of pressure. Okay? Not a lot of pressure there as compared to the finger grip. You see my fingernail is blanching, and now there's employing all the muscles of your forearm. Not a good idea. So simply holding your forceps properly will give you that lightness of touch. But all this has got to come with practice. So many of us are one hand dominant. So what I suggest in your daily activities, gentlemen, put a razor in your non-dominant hand to shave your face. I know it doesn't work if you come with lots of toilet paper on your face on the nicks and scratches. Another good way of doing this is put your toothbrush, hopefully it's not an electric toothbrush, again in your non-dominant hand, and try brushing your teeth and getting used to massaging your gums down your teeth and not brushing vigorously with lightness of touch. Simply swapping your knife and fork over, again, is training your left hand as well as your right hand. And these are very important because even when assisting, you'll find when assisting a thread, you're inevitably holding something. And as you go round, as we did last week, go round anastomosis, you'll find a thread comes out the other direction and you have to put your forceps in the opposite hand. So there are many things you can do to actually improve your dexterity and improve the function. And here's a little model that we've set up. And what I've done is put some bendy straws on a bit of plasticine or blue tack on a plate, and I've got rice and dark rice in those. And the idea is that you pick up the rice, it's pretty solid, and if you grab it too hard it goes skidding across the place, and you need to drop it in the end of each of these straws. And as I'm concentrating, you'll probably find that I'm now stopping talking, and it's not so easy. But this is testing your skills and focusing the movement. You can make it more fun with having somebody call out purple, yellow, green, orange, and a bit like that Simon Says electronic game. I go purple, orange, yellow, green, oh, I've dropped those, and green. And you do that with both your right and your left hand. And I would suggest that you do this a couple of times a week. And my left hand, you can see, is not as good, and a little bit of out of practice with COVID, but there you go, and it can start off easy. Now that's proving very difficult. An awkward, simple thing to do is place a spoon on the table with a bit of rice, and you've got a bigger area, simply pick the rice up and pop it in the spoon. And I'll put your non-dominant hand behind your back. You can change these into rather fun games with forfeits if you wish. And have some fun. But the important thing is that you want somebody to be able to use a pair of forceps, bring it into an operative field, deliberately and accurately, and to hold. And the holding of tissue is a gentle reflection and retraction. And I've got some simulated tissue here, and I'll pop it on the table. And with the forceps, I've been practicing just, this is wet, sort of gelatine, picking it up and moving it around with edges, reflecting and without crushing, because that is the important element. Now the other important thing to remember with forceps themselves are rather like spears. And it's very easy, if you're not careful, to literally stick it straight through the tissue. Now you might think that as being rather melodramatic. However, when dissecting out a cortex of a lung or a cortex of a heart around inflammatory tissue, it is very easy to actually stick your forceps directly into the tissue. Very useful instruments, but also potentially dangerous. It's important that you learn to practice both hands so you can comfortably swap the forceps from right to left, and remember to close your fingers around it to maximize your feel and touch of the instrument. I'd like to know how you've been getting on and how you've been practicing. I've got a questionnaire on the Facebook page and invite you to fill it in. It is anonymous. I'd like to know how you're doing, how you're practicing, if this makes sense, and if you've got any questions. I'll be very happy to address them through this series. Next week, we're going to go on to the knife. But like Shakespeare said, a knife, my kingdom for a knife. Or, is that a knife I saw before me in Lady Macbeth? However, we are going to focus on the knife. I hope this makes sense. I hope you're enjoying your practice. Remember, we've got to practice until we can't get it wrong. These models are all here to help you refine your skills, refine lightness of touch, and I hope your surgery and enjoyment of surgery comes with your appreciation of the improved dexterity of your hands. Wherever you are, thank you very much for joining the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. I wish you well, I wish you good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or good day, and I hope you're safe. Thank you very much indeed for your support, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you.